Hello, Gen Genies. It's me, Julie.
And Rich.
Before we get started today, we want to let you in on some exciting news. We have launched our new Patreon page for the podcast.
Woohoo! We are super excited about this new chapter for CutOff Genes.
So, Patreon is a website where listeners like you can pledge a small monthly amount. We're talking only $5 or $10, guys, to support the podcast and help defray the cost of bringing you the show each week.
To be clear, CutOff Genes will continue to be absolutely free. But to thank you for your support, we are going to offer our patrons some fun little extras.
Like early access to the podcast every week, where you'll get to hear the latest episode before it's released to the general public.
And why not make your friends jealous with exclusive patron-only CutOff Genes swag?
Fancy. And here's something you guys have been asking for, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to host a monthly, hour-long, online Ask Me Anything session where patrons at the $10 level can literally ask me anything.
Anything? You're a brave woman, Julie.
You know, I know. I'm also going to give access to my blog, Are You My Father?, where I tell the story of my search, actually it's my life story basically, for my biological father in even more detail than I did on the podcast.
Wow, your blog was the original inspiration for CutOff Genes, wasn't it?
It was.
Wow. Well, all patrons at any level will receive a shout out on the podcast along with our undying gratitude for your support.
Yep. You guys know that this show is a labor of love for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. It'd mean so much to me if you would consider supporting our work here on the podcast by going to patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast.
That's Patreon, patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast.
We'll add a link to it on the podcast and on the Facebook page. Thank you all, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Woohoo!
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip, hip, hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Genes.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I am a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the co-host and producer of this podcast. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Richard.
What's going on?
Hey, do you know, have you ever heard of Nettie Stevens?
Nutty or Nettie?
Nettie, it's probably short for like Lynette.
Oh, no, I haven't.
Or Nanette.
Who's Nettie?
Or something.
Who is Nettie
Nettie Stevens was the geneticist who discovered that sex is determined by the XX and XY chromosomes.
Oh, when did that happen?
Well, it happened. The discovery was falsely credited to her colleague, E.B. Wilson. She published her paper first, and her work was eventually shown to be more correct, but for years she was described as a lab technician.
Isn't that awful?
And it looks, I don't know when it was. I guess I could look it up really fast.
I'm willing to bet EB was a man.
Oh, heck yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, she looks Victorian to me. So,
wow.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
See, I thought when you said Nettie Stevens, I'm like, is that one of Samantha Stevens' relatives?
Alter egos?
She was Serena, and she was also Nettie.
Serena? That's how Serena talked.
Do you know, for years growing
Serena.
up, when I was a kid, I did not know that Serena was Elizabeth Montgomery. That it was the same actress.
There's something wrong with you. You know why?
No, she had that. She had the dark hair and the different
but you
makeup.
have color blindness.
That's true, but I don't think that. I just think she was so good that I was willing to believe, or not willing. I was duped.
Yeah, you weren't willing to believe. You absolutely believed it. It was like a cult.
And yeah, exactly. Very susceptible. And in the credits, because I always watch the credits, always. It actually said that Serena was played by Pandora Spox.
Really?
Yes.
Aren't they clever?
Yeah. So
because they knew that dumb kid like you would believe it.
Thanks, Julie. But I'm like, Pandora Spox. I got to look her up. But this is the days before the internet when you couldn't look somebody up.
Pandora Spox.
She only had one credit. It was Serena.
Pandora Spox is a great drag queen name.
Oh, are you kidding? I'm sure it's been done.
Probably.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool story, bro.
Thank you, sis.
All right. Let's see what else. Oh, let's thank a couple of patrons.
Oh, yes, let's.
This week, I would like to thank Veronica Matthews and Amy Dichter, who is my NPE friend who was actually in studio that one time.
Oh, yes. I remember Amy. Oh,
Yes.
thanks,
Amy
Amy,
became
and the
a
rest of
patron.
you.
That
I
was
really
nice.
appreciate it. We appreciate the support. This is episode 91. We're approaching the grand 100, and it's so nice
It's going to be
know
a party, guys.
that people are supporting what we do here on the podcast. We love you guys, and we appreciate that you're being so nice to us. So thank you.
I second all of that. Okay. There's a new groundbreaking feature on MyHeritage.
It's groundbreaking, huh?
It's groundbreaking.
Okay. What is it?
Would you like to hear about it?
I would love to hear about anything groundbreaking.
Sure. So MyHeritage, the leading global service for discovering your past and empowering your future. Clearly, this was a press release from MyHeritage. Announced today the release of MyHeritage in Color, an innovative feature that automatically colorizes black and white photos and produces incredible results. Photos are colorized by using sophisticated deep learning technology that is currently exclusive to MyHeritage. So you can upload your old family black and white pictures, and if you so desire, you can instantly colorize them, and it looks really cool.
Have you seen it?
I have.
I'm trying to decide how I feel about this.
I know. Well, here's the thing. It doesn't permanently change the original.
Right.
So, and what I have noticed is that it makes, a lot of those old black and white pictures look very stagnant, and because they were standing there for hours.
Yes.
And not real.
Yes.
For some reason, the colorization makes them look more like people today.
Well, I guess that makes sense in that. So I'll just preface this by
Yes.
saying I really hate when they colorize old
I do
movies
too.
and old TV shows. And speaking of, like, Bewitched, it's sometimes I catch Bewitched on. I'm like, oh, Bewitched. The first couple of seasons of that show were shot in black and white. And some of them are shown colorized, and it's not good.
Weird.
It's not good.
Yeah, but when they first started colorizing, it wasn't good.
I know, but
This is pretty good.
I don't need to see it in
No,
color.
you
I
don't.
don't want to watch I Love Lucy in color.
No, it's distracting.
It is distracting,
Yeah.
and it's not as funny.
No. Oh,
Yeah.
color
But-
takes away humor.
But
Interesting.
I will say that when I have seen documentary footage from World War II that they have colorized, or certain things where they might have been shown too fast or something, and they slow it down to a normal speed, and then they colorize it, and it looks like documentary footage. I think that's really brings it home.
Did you see that one a documentary? I think it was with it was all World War I footage. That I don't know if they colorized it, but didn't they read the lips of the people? They added sound to it.
This sounds very familiar. Yes,
Yes, and they read people's lips and they knew what they were saying,
Right.
so they actually dubbed their conversations in.
I know I've seen something like this, and it really is that was amazing.
Yeah.
And I guess if I were to look at some old black and white pictures and then suddenly see the color in my own family photos, I think that would be interesting.
I think it would also help to see how much you look like them.
Yeah, I mean, you have to really guess too, because you don't know what color dress someone's
Well,
wearing.
yeah, you
or,
don't
know.
guess. I mean, and actually, it says something here. Wait, is a colorization?
I'll tell you my little story
Okay,
in
do
the
tell me
meanwhile while
I'm
you're
looking
looking
for
this
it.
up.
Okay.
So, I'd like to think that I was a smart kid, I was intelligent.
Are you saying that because I called you a dumb kid?
No,
Okay.
I'm telling you this because I'm about to tell you something very stupid that I
okay.
said. And I'll never forget. And I think my mom, humored me and she was proud of me in that she was raising someone who was somewhat intelligent. And one day I asked her, because we had looked at a bunch of pictures of her in black and white and, when she was a kid. And I said to her, something like, when did the world become color? Like when you were a kid, we're thinking.
You're not the only kid that
I know,
said that.
and, I'll never forget the look my mother gave me. And she just said, think about what you just said.
I love your mom.
And instantly I realized how stupid it was. And I mean, we're talking now over 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's still like, I can still cringe that I even said that. But I loved that her response wasn't like, you idiot, or even like,
Think about what you just said.
It wasn't-
She made it a learning moment.
she did, but I think she was a little surprised that I'd come up with something that stupid. Because, like I said, I was somewhat intelligent.
I am fairly sure I asked the same question.
Really?
Yeah. I
Especially
think
because all the movies were in black and white.
everything was black and white when we were
Right.
kids. We didn't have a color TV. Color TV took a little longer to get to Australia. So you had it sooner than I did.
Right.
And it was a big deal.
But even watching old black and white movies, you could
Yes.
say, oh, well, those movies were made in the 40s and
when
everything
things
was...
were black and white.
Think about what you just said. I think I'm going to use that next time somebody says something really stupid to me.
That's
I'll just
fantastic.
think about what you just said.
Yeah. Oh.
I've actually never told that story ever to anybody.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
I like it. Good one, Irene. Love it. I love Irene Castle.
Oh, yes.
All right. So while you were talking, I was so engrossed in your story, I didn't find what I was looking for. So, while highly realistic, automatically colorized photos have simulated colors which may differ from the real ones, from the actual colors. Oh, really?
Yes.
Shocking. MyHeritage hopes that this responsible practice will be adopted by others who use photo colorization technology. Wait, what? Oh, I didn't mention the responsible practice. As part of MyHeritage's commitment to preserving the authenticity of historical documents, the company differentiates colorized photos from those photographed originally in color using a special embossed palette symbol in the bottom left corner of colorized photos.
Well, that's smart.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so they want it to be clear that this is a colorized photo.
Right. I mean, that's part of honoring the truth of it, right? Like that this was not
Yes.
taken in color.
Exactly.
Yes.
I love it. MyHeritage in color trademark is a freemium feature. It actually says freemium feature on MyHeritage. Several photos may be colorized for free, after which continued use of this feature requires a subscription.
The next time somebody says the word freemium to me,
I've never heard it before.
I'm going to say, think about what you just said. Because there is no such word.
I love it. I think we should take a break and think about what you just said.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Genes Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
All right, here is a forensic genealogy story.
Ooh. I feel like we need to hear some kind of like medical center music
Dun,
or something. Medical center? What is that, from like the 70s? I couldn't have come up with a more current reference.
And could that, by the way, could Medical Center be a more convoluted title for a show? Medical Center.
Well, there was like Emergency,
Yeah.
which brought you to the medical center.
There
And
was a medical center.
There was a show called Medical
I
Center.
know.
I want to say Chad Everett was on it.
Probably.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to look. I don't know, but I'm willing to bet you that that's true. And I've never once watched an episode of Medical Center.
No one your age should know that.
I'm a well of useless
Yes.
pop
You're
culture
a veritable
information.
reservoir of useless information.
I wish I was a swirling maelstrom of
feminine
supremacy.
supremacy.
Or even male supremacy. I don't think I'm...
Or just supremacy.
You know?
Yeah, sure.
I'd even go... Instead, I'm just swirling.
Like a dervish. All right. Anyway, going back to forensic genealogy.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
After 28 years, police closed in on their murder suspect. Now he's dead.
Well, you snooze, you lose, cops. Why'd you take 28 years? Or
I'm going to tell you. Okay, as a 51-year-old auto mechanic who had no apparent criminal history, Hans Alejandro Huitz seemed to be leading a staid, law-abiding life. He was married to a retired police officer and lived on a cul-de-sac just 2 miles from the ocean in Virginia Beach. Mm-hmm. By early this month, though, police in Montgomery County, Maryland, had come to view Huitz as something else, the leading suspect in an unsolved homicide going back 28 years when someone had walked into a country store, stabbed the owner 29 times with a broken wine bottle and possibly a knife, and fled with the money from the cash register. So at the time, they extracted a DNA profile from the blood trail because he cut himself on the glass, and submitted it to the national database that contained DNA profiles of convicted felons, which is the one they've been using for years, but it never produced a match, obviously because he doesn't have a criminal record.
Right.
So in late 2018, Montgomery investigators asked Parabon, good old Parabon Nanolabs, a DNA technology company in Western Virginia, to determine whether the sample shared similarities with profiles submitted by anyone who'd submitted DNA for their family history research. Parabon reported at least one name back to the police. Steve Smuggereski, a longtime genealogy hobbyist who helps the department's cold case unit, began reviewing the case. He started building a family tree, eventually identifying men who had lived in the Maryland or Virginia area in 1992. On December 11th, investigators paid a call to one such person who said he had never been to the Sugarloaf Mountain Market and did not know. I think it was a man that was murdered. The man allowed detectives to swab the inside of his mouth for a DNA sample. As it turned out, the sample did not match the DNA left at the crime scene, but it had similarities enough that investigators asked a different company, Bodie Technology, to analyze whether and how the profiles were related. Bodie's tests showed that the man they just visited was probably a very close relative to the 1992 killer. The results indicated that the suspect in the homicide was either a biological brother or father.
Wow.
So close.
Yeah.
By then, they knew that the man's father was dead and that he had only one biological brother, Hans Huitz. On Tuesday, investigators went to Huitz's workplace with a search warrant for his DNA and took a sample of saliva from the inside of his cheek. Police said in their arrest warrant. Montgomery County officers then drove 225 miles north to department's crime lab. Hours later, according to the warrant, the lab made a direct match to the 1992 crime scene.
Oh,
so it was the brother.
Okay.
Right. Authorities descended near Huitz's home Wednesday morning and confronted him while he was inside his vehicle as officers were negotiating his surrender. He brandished a gun and was shot dead by at least one of them.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's quite a story.
Yes. So Sergeant Chris Homrock says we figured out the who in this case, but we will never know the why. Doesn't that suck?
He must have known when they came to swab his cheek.
Yeah, he was prepared.
Yeah.
He probably had that gun waiting
because
and
he
was
knew
ready.
he knew what he did.
Yeah. And he'd gotten away with it for 28
well,
years.
At some point, like, I don't know, I've never done anything like that where you go, where you have to worry about somebody, where you got to look over your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
How long does it take before you stop looking over your shoulder? Maybe never.
Right.
But at some point you think you'd relax into it. Like, well, if they haven't caught me now, it's been 20 years,
Yeah,
I guess.
but I wonder if he's been following what's been happening the last couple of years with genetic genealogy.
Yeah. You know what? I bet there's a lot of people who did some horrible things a long time ago
that are shaking in their boots.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? I would be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my! But I'm amazed that they were still looking for somebody for a 28-year-old.
It was a cold case. It was, and there are groups now that do this.
Yeah.
They go and find cold cases, and they're like, "Hey, why don't you let us try to work on this?"
Right.
And
because you figure after a certain amount of time, there's not even a relative around to. I mean, not 28 years is not that long. I mean, it's a long time, but it's not long enough for everyone involved in it to be dead. It's not like that case we found where they found the headless man in the cave,
right?
That was from 1800s.
But I mean, what the army repatriation division
that you're working for,
that I do a little bit of work for, they in repatriating soldiers who were MIA or killed in action are. They contact the families and get DNA samples from sometimes, because a lot of the times, and they have to get 3 mitochondrial samples and 1 Y-DNA sample. So in order to get samples of relatives of these soldiers that they would like to repatriate from mass graves in Europe and the Philippines, they have to sometimes to get, because mitochondrial DNA goes from female to female to female to female, Y goes from male to male. Right. So if that soldier didn't have a sister, then you have to go up to his mother and find her sister and go down from that
Oh, wow.
to get the mitochondrial DNA. And sometimes you have to get like a first cousin 3 times removed for that. And then the same with the Y.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, right.
Is there enough DNA in a body in a mass grave to? I mean, after all these years,
It depends. It depends on the condition of. I don't know exactly what.
Right.
What the condition is. I'm not told anything
Sure.
about
You
what
just
they
get
have.
you just get the DNA information as far as
I don't even get I get the DNA. I don't do the DNA. Strangely enough, I'm a genetic genealogist.
Right.
I just find the DNA, the potential DNA matches for the Army, and then
Right.
they do all the DNA stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Because you figure if they're doing it from Vietnam or World War II or whatever, that's a long time ago.
It's a long time ago.
And bodies degrade in the
Yes.
in the ground.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but it's a really amazing program.
I think it's great. I love that you're doing that, Julie.
I do too. Thank you, Bonnie Wade Muccia. I'm sorry. She's a listener who actually recommended me for that job.
From this podcast.
From this podcast.
Oh my gosh. Our listeners are the best.
The best.
Right?
Yes. Okay, here's another amazing story.
Great.
For almost 500 years, the bodies of 20,000 people lay undisturbed underneath the streets in the very heart of London.
That's a lot of bodies.
Yeah. I said that like a Twilight Zone.
I know. I expected you to go, whoa.
With a flashlight under my chin. But this is a city that demands constant change, and excavations at Liverpool Street Station for the state-of-the-art Crossrail project uncovered the remains. The burial ground was mainly used for the city's poorest inhabitants or those who died in hospitals, such as the nearby infamous asylum Bedlam. It was called Bedlam.
Right. Isn't that how when you say, oh my God, it was terrible, it was Bedlam.
Yeah.
Right?
I wonder if that's where that came from.
Oh, I'm sure of it. I'm
love
sure of
that.
it.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
God, I love this. Okay.
You could look up the
I will.
etymology of it.
I will. Okay. During its use between 1570 and 1739, an estimated 20,000 people were buried there, including numerous plague victims. The graveyard was forgotten for centuries until it was rediscovered in the 19th century during the building of Liverpool Street in 1823.
Isn't it amazing that something can be forgotten? A cemetery, a burial ground. How can a burial ground be forgotten?
I mean, it has to be somewhere in the city's archives.
First of all, at some point, if you stop putting bodies there, then over time, people would forget, everyone who knew the people buried there would have died off.
Yeah.
But you would still think that it's a cemetery of sorts, even if there are no headstones.
I guess if you think about it, the world has been around for so long. There's probably bodies
Everywhere.
Well,
there's a lot more dead than alive.
Yes, indeed.
So, where are you going to put them all? But still, how do you forget a burial ground?
I don't think they forgot it. I think they just ignored it.
Yeah.
No thorough archaeological work was done until the 1980s, but the work between 2011 and 2015 for Crossrail was the most extensive. A team of 60 archaeologists carefully removed around 3,000 skeletons and meticulously recorded evidence from the site. Using parish burial records, very cool, from across the city of London, the team were also able to identify some of the unfortunate inhabitants of the cemetery and find out some information about them, such as cause of death. Really makes you appreciate modern medicine when you have reasons of death such as stopping of the stomach, a burning jaw, and sore legs.
What is a burning jaw?
Probably a toothache.
Right?
Yeah. Or
That
lockjaw or
No,
something.
but it would just say it's a toothache, and a toothache could be an infection, and an infection can kill you if you have no way
Exactly.
to stop
They
the
probably
infection.
were all infections.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or tumors.
Tumors.
It's not a tumor. The details that have been unearthed reveal the difficulty of life in London in that area. An example of this unfortunate cloth worker, Simon Ward, who lost 2 wives in just 2 years, the first suddenly in 1676 and the second 2 years later to disease. 5 of the remains were tested positive for the plague pathogen. This was the first ever identification of plague DNA from that era. That's cool.
Right.
Crossrail, which is also known as the Elizabeth Line, is expected to open next year and will take commuters across the capital.
That whole thing, though, that whole time reminds me, it's so Dickensian, like when you look at these Dickens novels or the movies they've made of them, and you see how poor people lived, and it's amazing, right?
I'm obsessed with it. Once I started, when I really started researching my family, especially when I got back to England, so many of them were in the workhouses in London.
Right.
And you get to read, you see where they were checked in and checked out and notes that were made about them. I had somebody that was actually in the Cummings family, but is not my family, but I thought it was originally. But like somebody who was maybe a 4 times great grandmother, somebody had written in her discharge that this woman is a drunkard and neglects her husband and children.
Oh my God.
And he works for the parish or something like that. But it's like you can see personal notes about people who you're related to.
Are you saying that's where you got it from?
No, I'm not related to these people.
Oh, that's right. You never neglect your children.
Though there are other things that we've spoken about extensively.
She's don't you go around stealing people's goats?
Yes. No, that was the Cummings family too.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh.
No, my family was the murder-suicides.
Oh, good. Then my goat is safe.
Yes.
Because
your goat is safe.
You always get my goat. Oh, and speaking of Dickensian, the other night I went to like some trivia night at this local bar.
I love trivia.
Yeah, at just Idle Hour down the street.
I want to go to trivia.
I do it on Tuesday nights. They're going to do it tonight.
Do you do it every Tuesday night?
I don't. I went for the first time, and it was a bunch of people. We were on a team, and they go every week, and I just happened to join them.
Right.
And the last question was worth 4 points, and it was it was a musical question, and none of them knew musicals. And the question was, in the musical Oliver, who sings "Pick a Pocket or Two"? And I was like, oh, it's Fagin.
Fagin. It's
not the Artful Dodger. That's what everyone else thought, because the Artful Dodger is what everybody knows. And he sings "Consider Yourself."
Oh, right.
But Fagin is the
right,
older gentleman who is the leader of all those kids. And so everyone wrote Artful Dodger, and the guy who was scoring it said, "Oh, well, we could accept that too." And I'm like, "No, you're not. That's not."
I would have raised holy hell.
I did. And you know what? My team won.
Good.
So on that note, I think we should take a break.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to Cut Off Genes with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/Cutoff Genes podcast. Now, back to the program.
Hey, it's story time.
Good.
This is part 2 with Jeff Lanka.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, my East Coast former client, who's delightful. And he's going to tell the rest of the story, and we will see you on the other side.
At one point, Annette said, somebody called about 2 weeks ago with a similar story. She blurts out.
I love your impression of Annette.
Yeah. Well, she's got the thick Boston accent.
Yeah.
Then the youngest of the 3 sisters says, "Give me the phone. You guys are stupid. Philip, do you remember Jocelyn Buckingham?" And he goes, "No." And so then she says, "Well, she was a nurse." "Oh, you mean Jay?" Apparently that was her nickname. And he says, "Yeah, I dated her for a year." So she says to him, "Well, we have a guy here who we believe to be your son."
Oh my God.
Oh, that's interesting. And so they just took it with such grace, and they were like very excited. See, this was a relationship he had before he ever met Annette, so there was no shame in it or anything like that.
Yeah, that's always a bonus.
Right. So then I talked to them face to face on FaceTime, and they were like overjoyed. It turned out to be very, very happy, and we got a beat. They live in North Carolina, so it wasn't like we'll just go over, and it turned out well on that end.
Right. So tell me a little bit about when you saw each other face to face, or when he saw you. Was there a recognition?
That's what. Annette. So basically, Annette, she pretty much takes over the conversation.
Yes, she does. Yes.
Yes. So she's like, oh, look at him. He looks just like you. Yeah. So we ended up, we stayed in touch, and we decided we would go down there in January of 2019. And so we drove down, the whole family, myself, my wife, and 2 kids drove down there, and we spent a nice, I think it was 3 days down there, and they showed us where they live, and I met there's 2 half-brothers and a half-sister on his side, and I met one of the brothers and the half-sister. They all live down in North Carolina. And this was, the story behind it that he gave was that he was in yeshiva and he hated it. So he ended up leaving when he was a senior in high school and going into the Marines, and he was stationed in Rhode Island, and that's when he met Jay. They had this relationship, and suddenly she just decided, I'm going to break it off. She says, I'm moving to Biloxi. We have to end it. And he says, I loved her, and I would have married her had she not broken it off. Oh. Now, the theory behind it is that she was pregnant with me, and her mother basically took over her life and said, this is what you're doing. You're ending it with him. You're giving up the baby, and there's going to be no shame on this family.
Yeah, that's
kind of what we theorize happened.
Yeah, okay. Can I ask, how tall are you, Jeff?
I'm 6'5".
And how tall is Philip?
Philip's about 6 feet, maybe 6'1".
Oh, he's not that tall.
But Jocelyn was tall.
Oh.
She was so the combination of them, I guess, made somebody taller.
Yeah, you got the tall gene.
Yes.
Okay.
The other side, I had contacted that Tyler Jocelyn from the other side, and I kind of told her what the scoop was, and she says, okay, you know what? I'm going to contact Amy, because out of the 3 siblings, she's the most level-headed, and I'm going to give her your contact info. So only about a half hour later, Amy contacts me, and so I ended up meeting, well, I didn't meet the brother, Edward. He lives in Georgia, but I went down to Tennessee. They live in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I met both sisters, Amy and Lynn, and they're very nice. And again, it was a whole positive thing. They came up to visit me, and they did the Tunnel to Towers run because they're both runners. And in fact, Philip and Annette came up to visit me as well. So we've both gone there, and they've both come here.
Oh, that's so great. I love that. That's like a palate cleanser because it doesn't always turn out that way.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
How long ago did Jocelyn pass away?
From when you told me about her, it had only been about 1.5 years.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And in fact, they told me that when she, at the end of her life, when she was in a nursing home and kind of had dementia, she kept trying to tell the kids something, and they couldn't figure out what it was she was trying to tell them, and they figured out it was probably about me.
Yeah, it probably was.
Well, the girls, especially the older of the 2, which is Lynn, she told me confidentially that she was angry with her mother for not telling them about me.
Yeah, I've heard that from some people lately, and which surprises me. Yeah, I guess it surprises me because they're usually overjoyed to have another sibling.
Yeah. No, they were.
Yeah, but then the mother feels like they're getting grief. So I think what that just means was she didn't have to do that. We would have. Yeah.
Right.
But that's the second time this week I've heard that. Interesting.
I forgot to mention that Philip did a DNA test, and he came back parent-child with me.
Yep.
And then the girls, Jocelyn and Amy, did a DNA, and they came back first cousins. Now, that probably makes sense since they're only half-sisters.
Yeah. This was on Ancestry?
Yes.
Well, it probably said close family to first cousins, right?
Right.
Usually, if it's a half-sibling, it says close family to first cousin. And
Okay, okay.
if it's a half sibling, it's usually over 1,300 centimorgans.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So do you have any more plans to reconnect?
Well, now it's like, okay, the excitement has died down, right?
Yeah.
And they do live far away.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the one hand, my family is tiny, right? So everybody's dead. I was an only child. My dad was an only child. My mother had just one brother who died. So when we do like Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's only the four of us. There's nobody, right? So, I kind of feel sad when I hear about people like I had 40 over, there was cousins, there was aunts, I'm like, I got none of that, right? So here is like a perfect opportunity for that, right? But they do live far away. But on the other hand, it's a difficult emotional quandary to deal with because, like, for instance, Philip's birthday was in, we decided I would call him Pop instead of Philip, but I didn't want to call him Dad, right? Yeah. So his birthday was in December, and my wife said, why don't you get him a card? So I went into CVS, and I started looking at cards, and I was like, I don't want to get him a card that just says Happy Birthday. But then I was looking at the cards that was like Dad, and I was like, I don't want to get him this either.
Yeah.
So I walked out, and I didn't get him anything.
Okay.
Because I was so emotional, like, oh man, I don't know.
Kind of feel that stuck in the middle thing, where this is actually really really normal for after the reunion. You kind of like there's a honeymoon period, and then you kind of start to think about other things, and that's when a lot of stuff comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm naturally a procrastinator, and I'm not very good at keeping in touch with people. And so, they typically would contact me. Now, I think for them it's a lot easier because I'm just one person. Now I found like 10 people.
Yeah, that's overwhelming.
And then, it's like, even though we have this biological bond, it's still kind of like we're strangers.
Yeah.
So that's a little weird.
Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm. Even though I'm not supposed, like, let's do Thanksgiving and, all of this history. There's no history.
Yep.
They're very, very nice people, all of them. So I'm a little up in the air with that.
And
stuff.
that's okay. You can forgive yourself for that because basically you have your answers. Has your worldview changed at all, or how you feel about your connection to the earth? Does that make sense? Let me tell you what I mean. For me, it wasn't about looking for long lost family and love even per se. It was about finding connection and roots and proof that I came from something. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, for me, I never felt connected to the earth. I felt very alien because I couldn't pinpoint how I came to be. And that for me was the most gratifying part of it, just so I now can point to, well, this is this side of this family and this is this side of this family. And, because I love history and I had no history before. So for me, that's a cool thing because now I've done my genealogy all the way back to the 1700s on both sides, which is for me very gratifying. So I don't know if for you, what's your most I don't know how differently do you feel than you did before knowing this? Let me just put it as simply as that. Is there anything that you can pinpoint?
So my wife and I had been going to a therapist for a few years prior to this happening. He just so happened he specializes, one of his specialties is adoptees. He's adopted also. And, he had a horrible experience with his search, Okay. But anyways, he had said that being an adoptee is like being a book that starts at chapter 2.
Mm-hmm.
So chapter 1 is missing, and you don't know what happened. You know.
Yeah.
With respect to having roots, I never really thought of that. It never really crossed my mind.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying. It just didn't cross my mind.
We all have different experiences, and it manifests differently, in all of us.
Right. Right.
But interesting that your therapist specializes in adoptees.
Right.
I like that. I believe we had a call with him once, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe we did. You're right.
Yeah, that was cool.
I have to tell you, because the excitement has died down now.
Mm-hmm.
It's over a year later, and he kept trying to dig at me about how do you feel about this? What's going on? What do you think? And I was like, dude, it's not a big deal. And I got a little angry with him for prodding me about it.
Huh. Yeah. Interesting. So he was trying, because his experience is obviously different as an adoptee than yours.
Right,
and
right,
so he's
right.
trying to, see if you have issues because of your adoption. And it sounds like you don't.
And I just didn't want to, I guess I didn't want to talk about it. Well, I thought that there's no issue.
Yeah.
I mean, the issue is that I don't feel like I need to keep daily, even weekly contact with them. So, maybe that's wrong. But there's really no right or wrong here. That's the thing.
Absolutely. There is no right or wrong. You have your truth, and you handle it the way that you need to handle it, and you don't owe anybody anything. And everybody, it sounds like everybody is just great, and it worked out kind of perfectly.
Yes.
Yeah.
It did work out.
Yeah.
I just remembered because there was something else, a couple of other things. One is that, New York State just recently, now you can get your records. Mm-hmm. So I was just about ready to fill out the form to get, and then I suddenly realized, wait a minute, this might not be appropriate because I think I was born in Rhode Island. Because that's where she lived.
Yeah,
so even though I was adopted from Spence Chapin, which is based in Manhattan, but I don't know where the paperwork would be.
That's a really good question. I can't remember what your paperwork said. You might want to have a look at the stuff that you had, because I don't know. She might have gone into the city to have you. Like her mother might have...
Oh, you mean well, the adoptions paperwork probably is New York, because, again, it was Spence Chapin.
Yeah. But I'm wondering
where would my original birth certificate be? That's the question. I don't know.
It literally depends on what state you were born in. And if you don't know that, you could maybe contact Spence Chapin and they could maybe tell you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing was, that movie that's been out for a few years now, about the triplets.
Yes.
So, that was another agency in New York, which apparently no longer exists.
No, it does not. And a lot of fishy things happened with that agency. I've had clients that were adopted through there too. Every time I hear the name, I'm like, uh-oh, Louise Wise.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And, those, unfortunately, everything didn't work out well for them.
Yeah.
Like many people.
That movie was amazing, wasn't it?
Yes.
That's what's so great about what's happening now with DNA. Adoptees have more of a voice.
Yes.
And our experiences are becoming more validated. And every experience is valid. And that's why I love doing this, because we all have different experiences and there is no right or wrong. It just is. And I really thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah. It was really good to talk to you again, Jeff.
Thank you very much for listening.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff, for that. Can I just say what I really enjoyed about Jeff? Well, a lot of things I enjoyed about Jeff, but I like the fact about how honest he was about what do you do now? That, it's great. Everybody's great, but ultimately they're strangers. and
Right.
they live far away. And now what do we do with this? It's always very awkward and weird for people.
Right, because you spend so much time on the search.
Yes.
And then what happens next, right?
And there's always a honeymoon stage, and then it becomes what it's going to be,
Right.
usually.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. I like that he talked about that, though. A lot of people don't.
All right, life goes on.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, since we've come to the end, I am Richard Castle. My website is richardcastle.com if you care to go there and look up information about me, or follow me on the Twitter at Castle Songs.
I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. Follow me on the Twitter at Jules Jackson with 2 O's. Follow the podcast on the Twitter at CutOff Jeans Pod. Join the Facebook group CutOff Jeans Podcast. Answer a question, because I'm going to ask you one and I'll let you in probably. And also send me an email, reach out to me. I love hearing from you guys, and I love talking to you guys if you have a great story for story time. And you can write me at julesjackson@cutoffjeans.com.
Great.
And that's it.
Julie, do you like my new jeans?
I do. And you know what else?
What?
The truth is in your jeans.
I'm already fat enough, thanks.